What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? It's Josh Levine, your host of Rebel Radio. Welcome back. This is going to be our sexy episode. Just kidding. All our episodes are sexy. Hey, so today my guest is Amanda, the founder of Arsenic TV, Arsenic Magazine, Arsenic on Snapchat, Arsenic everywhere. If you're not familiar, it is, they're blowing up on Snapchat. Lots of pictures and videos of beautiful women. And Amanda's gonna come in and tell us how she's building this incredible business, this new publishing model, really founded on the idea of giving creative control to her talent and just being really grassroots. They launched this thing kind of as just an experiment. Nobody was getting paid. They had no website. She was really just emailing photos out to people, and now they've blown up. And like I said, they're the biggest channel on Snapchat. Really cool business, community-driven, crowdsourced, crowd-curated for anybody that's interested in building community and working with your crowd. She's the best at it, and she's gonna tell you how she does it. A couple secrets. Number one is feed people. She's gonna tell you how she does that. And number two is ask people what they want. And she's got some really smart lessons that we can all learn from there. So good stuff coming up. I hope you enjoy it. And now, check out my interview with Amanda from Arsenic TV. But I feel like we knew our parents' stuff.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean? Like we knew about The Sound of Music and the,
I don't believe
Man
that,
from U.N.C.L.E., whatever those stupid things are.
I believe that we had a better idea of other generations things than
Well, maybe it's just because there was less choice, right? Like we had to watch.
That's fair.
We had to watch shows from the 60s because that's what was on TV.
I think that's probably really, really true.
Yeah.
Because I remember, when cable was a thing, a new thing.
Yeah, of course.
So you really were limited for a while.
Did you have On TV?
No.
Did you ever see that one?
No.
So that was there was a documentary recently that was the first cable channel. So it was, and what there was a set-top box that had a key, and he just turned it on.
Okay, that's amazing. And that's so on like ON TV.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out.
And so it was one channel, and it was like mostly like softcore porn at night, and then they would have a couple movies
during the day.
Yeah.
We've been spending a lot of time lately talking about cable and about I found this book. It was recommended to me. It's not a brand new book, called I Want My MTV, about MTV starting on cable.
Mm-hmm.
And so cable was new.
Right.
No one had ever heard anything. I mean, people didn't even know what music videos were.
Yeah.
And I read it and I loved it, and I gave it to my business partner because I think there's a lot of things that are sort of analogous of what's happening in social media now to what was happening in cable, 20, 25 years ago. So we've been talking a lot about cable. I'll have to check out On TV.
Oh yeah, it's a trip.
Yeah, sounds really cool.
It's a trip. So if you would kind of take me back to the beginning. I want to know how you got started. I know your background is really interesting. I'm fascinated with Arsenic. We almost got to work together, which I was really bummed.
Yes, hopefully sometime. I'm not willing to say that it won't ever happen.
No, I'm sure it will.
But yeah, we were excited as well. So we'll have to find some other way to get in trouble together.
Absolutely. So how'd you come to this business?
So it started out as a passion project. My background is film production.
Mm-hmm.
I was working as an independent producer. My business partner at the time was an agent at CAA, and we'd been friends for probably a decade. I found that as my career was progressing in film, I was on set less and less. I was setting up bigger projects, which made them harder to kind of get into production. And I'm not a producer who particularly liked the sort of wheeling and dealing Hollywood bullshit.
Yeah.
I like to be on set. I like collaborating with people. I like the creative aspect of working with other creative people, usually who are far more creative than me. I'm much more of like just find really talented people and stick them together. It's something that I think that I like to do. And I missed it. And so I was looking for a way to be able to get myself back to set that I thought would be both inexpensive and relatively easy to do on the weekends, because at that time I wasn't looking to give up my film business career. And I had this idea that I could do some still photo shoots on the weekend. And in the digital age, that would be all but free. And surely there were a lot of other creative people in LA who might like to do something like that.
Yeah.
And that was all it was meant to be. I put together the first shoot and I got on set. And I was surprised to find something out that in hindsight, it's silly that I had never thought about. But I had never really thought about, especially in the commercial photography world, sort of different roles. Coming out of film, particularly coming out of independent film, people are really, really collaborative. And certainly there is a hierarchy, but oftentimes you're all sort of working together to solve a problem. In commercial photography, there is a very distinct difference between talent and sort of, the art director, creative director, the people controlling the shoot. And oftentimes it's controlled by men. A lot of art directors and creative directors, and a lot of times, the client representative is male, though not always. But there was very much this sort of idea that was still going on that felt really archaic to me. It felt like we had gone back to 1950, that the talent, who were often women, were really, their purpose was to be there and be pretty and be seen and not be heard.
They're props.
Exactly. They're living, breathing props. And I was shocked to find this out, that this was still happening. And so on this first photo shoot, I started talking to a lot of the models, and I was like, well, wait, what do you mean that you don't want to be a part of sort of the creative conversation? And they're like, oh, no, we don't do that. And I'm like, well, you don't do that because you can't or you don't want to?
Yeah.
And I started to find out that most of them wanted to have some impact, wanted to have a say. They just didn't feel like that they had a right to have a say, that it just wasn't done. So I thought, well, what if we inverted this paradigm? And since this was, something I was sort of doing just for fun, why not have a little bit of an experiment and see what happened if we allowed the models to remain the talent and still be sort of the focal point of the images, but also let them really control the images and sort of art direct their own photo shoot. And that was kind of the start.
That's cool.
And it quickly kind of took off. I mean, there's a lot of people who want to have a creative say. I mean, why wouldn't you want to sort of be part of the process? And so they would tell their friends, who would tell their friends. And pretty quickly, we were shooting multiple times a month. Lots of people were reaching out to sort of be a part of it and to shoot. And it kind of started to spread through word of mouth. I mean, at the time I had no distribution, and I was a person without my own Instagram or Facebook, much less a company Instagram or Facebook. I mean, there was no company. I was just emailing people the pictures.
Neat.
And
when did you realize that you were onto something?
So, I mean, a couple things happened. The clue that there was anything else was like the first sort of inkling was I was at dinner with Billy, and I had looped him into this project by hitting him up and saying, I want to do some photo shoots. Can I use your house? He had this really cool house up Laurel Canyon that, I mean, as far as we know, no rock star ever lived there, but it looked like a place that Jim Morrison could have OD'd. I mean, it just had that vibe.
Yeah.
And he was like, of course, we'd been friends for a long time. And he's like, here are the keys. Come and go as you please. Do whatever you want. And so he had been he'd been in and out and around what we were doing. And he and I went to dinner, and he was asking me how it was going. And I am very type A. So I had a film production company that had a name, and I decided to name this, even though it was not a company and wasn't anything more than just this idea. I wanted to at least keep them sort of separate, in separate buckets. And so I was calling it Arsenic.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, how's that arsenic thing going? And we were at dinner, and one of the servers walked by, and she heard him ask the question, and she stopped. She turned around, and she looked me dead in the eye, and she's like, wait a second, you're Arsenic? And this is probably like 4 or 5 months in, but I was completely blown away. I had been in the film business. I never in my life had somebody know something that I was working on without there being, any sort of publicity or sort of, marketing machine behind it. And I'm like, wait, how do you know what arsenic is? And she's like, are you kidding? Everybody knows. Obviously, she meant everybody in a certain set of people, but it's still it completely floored me. And it was sort of the moment that I thought, well, wait a second, maybe there's something here. And that was the first sort of thought, and I thought I was a genius when I suggested to Billy that we start a print magazine.
Cool.
Which he was like,
Great
whoa.
business
Yeah, exactly. He's like, whoa, slow your roll. That's maybe not what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm super stubborn. So the more he was like saying no, the more I was digging my heels in and saying, well, I want to do something. And so that was sort of the first time we started thinking about like, what could it look like? What would a magazine look like in 2016?
Yeah.
And we don't really even consider ourselves a magazine anymore, but the kernel of what became Arsenic came out of the conversation of like, okay, maybe print isn't the way to go, but what would make sense, and how could we use platforms that are available and things like that?
Yeah. So explain for anyone who's been hiding and not familiar with Arsenic, but because it's called Arsenic Magazine, or at least
the Instagram is called Arsenic Magazine.
Right.
The Snapchat,
but it's not a magazine.
It's not. No, it's not at all. And I think that as we continue to grow, even the idea of it being a magazine will become less and less a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we started out calling that, and partly in the idea of like we wanted to share our work and other people's work with people, and in a visual way. And in a lot of ways, I think that's a lot of what a magazine is. And at the time, we weren't looking at video, so in still images. So I think that's where the idea of magazine kind of stemmed from. But what is Arsenic is really, I would say it's sort of an innovative medium company that's both crowdsourced and crowd curated. We have a saying, around the office, we sort of believe that the crowd is the company. And everything we do sort of stems from that core idea. Yeah. And we sit on other social media platforms, Snapchat being the biggest. We're the biggest brand on Snapchat right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you read all the press and they're calling you the new Playboy or the new Maxim. And I think, I understand why they say that, but I think that sort of does a disservice. I agree.
I do understand why. I think it's going to become such a small piece of what we are, big picture. But I also think even today, I think what we're about and what we're trying to say and do is very different than what Maxim and Playboy set out to do in their heyday.
Well, I think, obviously they faced very different challenges and different, they lived in different times, right? But I come from print publishing originally myself, and I've seen how difficult it's been for traditional publishers to sort of adapt to this new world, right? And I think it's maybe fair to say that that's impossible, that it is someone like you that's going to come along and not think about any of the stuff that those companies are sort of weighted down with and just come up with new ideas.
It's I think it's always hard to be the, innovative. There's an argument that Polaroid should have come up with Instagram, right? It's always hard for the person on the inside to come up with the disruptive idea.
Yeah.
And so, I don't throw stones at legacy media. I think what they have done and built is remarkable. But I agree. I think it's really hard when you're in control of that kind of ship to try to pivot and do something so different as quickly as somebody can come in and do something new.
So, and I think part of it is what you said at the beginning is that it is an experiment, right? And so the stakes are low, the expectations are low.
Yeah, we were really lucky. It was truly something we were passionate about doing, and loved the people I met. But it was making it into a business was not at the forefront of my mind. So we got to make all decisions based on what do we want to do? What did we think was cool? What did we think the audience would respond to? As opposed to how could we include the audience? As opposed to somebody else who has to come in and think about making a presentation to their board of directors in 3 months.
Right.
And having that freedom lets you make choices from a very, very different place. And I think it was a huge advantage to us.
So how do you keep that? Obviously now it's a business. I've met some of your business team and I know you're talking to brands and you're building this media empire. And, are you able to keep that sense of experimentation and...
it's a conversation we have a lot, and it's challenging in one way and it's not in another. One of the advantages that I think we have and will continue to have is we are a crowdsourced, crowd-curated media company. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, all we have to remember to do is one thing: get out of the way of the crowd. Yeah. And as long as we keep that in mind, they'll dictate to us what the content is, what they want to see more of, the tone of the content in a lot of ways. Arsenic is a brand, and it certainly has a voice, and we say we like to trim around the edges to make sure that we stay true to that voice. Mm-hmm. But the rest, the crowd is really in control of. And for that reason, it makes it easy to not have to make some of those tough decisions of are we being true to the brand?
Right.
As long as we do our job and stay out of the way, we don't have to think too much about those other things. And then the other thing I think it's really important anytime you're in a position of trying to grow a business is to think about who your partners are. Right. And we're incredibly lucky in that the people that we've been working with and the people who've come on board to be our investors understand what we're trying to build and are really, really supportive of that. Mm-hmm. And they're not pressuring us to start to, conform to what a traditional media company might look like. In fact, I think what they're hoping for and looking for from us is the opposite. Mm-hmm. They want us to be disruptive and they want us to think about new ways of approaching old problems.
So, that's really interesting. There's sort of like two things in business that I see, and one is the YouTube model, right? It's this crowd driven experience. And the other I would call like the Steve Jobs approach, which, you know, he's famous for saying like people don't know what they want until you give it to them, right? And I think Facebook is a good example of that, right? Like they're in charge of the experience that their users have, and you know, it's very authoritative. And so why is your way the right way?
Well, for us, I think the key to what you just said is like there's been sort of an old school way of doing things in which sort of there was the man or the company that very much drove the experience, or there were these tools provided to people to do whatever they wanted with. And we think that we're sort of bridging those two things, in that, yes, the crowd can still submit anything that they want. There is an added layer of a brand voice, which is why we do still produce some of our own content, because we like to kind of continue to put a stake in the ground and establish, like, this is sort of what Arsenic is. This is the tone. This is the vibe. This is kind of the area we want to play in. And then I think the curation is really the key. That on YouTube, anybody can put on anything up, but there's not currently a great way for people to sort of, you know, vote things up or down within a vertical. Right. And so for that reason, I sometimes say, like, too much of anything is as good as having nothing. That when you can't parse through millions and millions of videos on your own to find that one gem. And so what Arsenic is trying to do is provide both a place and a platform for creators to put their work, but also the creators and the audience that want to view that work can also help filter up the really great pieces, so that you can come in and find something fantastic right away.
Right. So what about for you? How does, you know, you said this sort of came out of needing a creative outlet, and, you know, now you're chief operating officer, and you're presumably involved in managing a company and a staff and all that. And so how do you keep it fun and sort of relevant for what you want?
You know, my creative outlet has always been working close to and helping facilitate the vision of other creatives. I've never been somebody who wanted to actually paint the picture or direct the movie or write the movie. I loved putting together people and putting together really great teams and helping hear what somebody wanted to do and make that happen.
Where does that come from? Why is that your talent, and how did you develop that?
Oh, wow. I think my parents would tell you that I was potentially born with it. I probably came out of the womb as a fairly bossy little child.
Nice.
So I don't know that it was something that I learned or even developed. I think I was absolutely always this way. Well, I talked my way into my first movie set when I was 18 years old, and that was sort of the first time I sat back and realized that, there's a place for people who like creative things and love art and like creativity, but aren't necessarily somebody who is necessarily the visionary, but is great at kind of helping motivate and put everybody together and figure out how you get from A to B. Yeah. And I'd never had an experience like that. I had done some theater, and so I was slightly familiar with like a theater structure, but on a film, you know, when you really see somebody sort of rally 200 people toward a specific goal, but still see all this creativity swirling around this very like organized structure, there are not a lot of things that it's analogous to, and that was sort of like this light bulb went off for me, and I was like, this is the spot. Like I could be very happy here, but also I think do well in this space, and so I set out to really build a film career and work toward being a producer, and accomplished that and had a great time doing it, and was not looking to get out. What Arsenic has allowed me to do is that exact thing, but every day with more people. Yeah. I would be lucky if I could produce one or two things in 18 months as a film producer, and with Arsenic, every day I can help somebody facilitate a vision or have their work, you know, shared with other people, and it's a really exciting thing for me.
Yeah. That's cool. So let's talk about the crowd a little bit. I know you've mentioned kind of how that's so central, and you know, I've saw some of the stuff you do with the Arsenic House, which I'll be looking for my invitation.
Fair enough.
And there's a focus group staff meeting that maybe people can attend.
Yes. So. It's not set in stone as to when we do it, but we try to do it at least once a month. Okay. And we have a lunchtime staff meeting, and we serve pizza, which is important because before Arsenic, was officially a company, which was just a year ago, June. Everybody who worked at Arsenic was a volunteer, but the one thing we always did was feed people, and because it was all out of pocket, pizza's cheap.
Yeah.
So we joke that we were the crowd built on pizza. So sort of as a nod back to that, we will always serve pizza at our staff meetings.
Cool.
So we have our regular staff attend this meeting. We invite in the contributors and creators that we work with a lot, like a lot of the models and photographers and people that are a big part of our community. Then we always try to open it up and invite some people in that are just audience, because we like to know kind of what they think, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, et cetera. And then we use some sort of streaming service so that even if you're not in LA and you can't be present, you can still watch. And somebody from my team sort of is watching their comments and their feedback and their questions, and she represents those people, and then she'll ask some of their questions and things like that. And the idea is just, again, we believe that we are just, our job is to facilitate what they want. And so in order to do that, we have to hear from them. And we do that through the staff meeting, as well as other ways. We also try to ask a lot of questions on Instagram. We get on our Snapchat almost every day and ask the audience a question and do feedback for like 30 minutes and just hear what people were looking for and what they're not liking and things like that.
That's amazing. I'm curious what, that sounds so obvious that you should do that as a company, right? But yet so few companies do that. And especially in publishing, I think, there's a very top down, the channel, whether it's a magazine or whatever, is created in the image of the editor-in-chief or the publisher or the...
It's something we talk about inverting that like pyramid a lot,
Yeah.
because the old structure is very much built in the image of the editor. Oftentimes, that person started out, I mean, they're a diehard for whatever publication, which I have nothing but respect for, to give your entire career to something. They started out very young in a mailroom or a newsroom on a desk, and then they worked their way up. But by the time they reach that position, in a lot of ways, they can sometimes be out of touch with the very readers that they're trying to serve.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's really, really important to constantly ask your audience and ask the people that you are working with and working for what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, we would stick the reader survey in the magazine once a year, and I remember even then just feeling like we're just scratching the surface to understand people, and so give me some lessons that publishers should be learning from you.
Oh wow, that's a tough question. I don't know that I don't know that we're in a position. What we're doing is so different. I don't know that I'm actually in a position to give anybody any advice, especially an old school publisher. They face such huge challenges that we're so lucky not to. You hear all the time about when the price of diesel goes up 2 cents, it can literally make or break a print media company. Yeah. I can't imagine living in a world with those kind of, margins. As far as, the things that we really, really believe is, we believe in democratizing content. So I think I would say to anybody in a position to be creating content that the time has come that people should have a voice and demand a voice in any content that they're consuming. And that we should all take a step back and think about, why sort of tradition was that somebody knew best, and how we can challenge that idea and allow people to kind of have an easy, direct way of saying what they want and then make decisions based on it. And you see other people. I mean, Amazon puts their pilots on Amazon for people to vote on.
Right.
There's more and more of that happening, all the time, where people are being a part of the process. And I think that overall, a lot of people are going to start shifting to that model. I think the crowd will demand it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about that and how well this thinking, you have such great business lessons, but, in some ways that's overshadowed by the beautiful women on the site or on the channels, right? And so, maybe this isn't a fair question, but, how well does all this stuff work with different types of content that aren't maybe as inherently appealing?
I think it works with any kind of content. I certainly understand that sometimes the message gets lost in the visuals,
right.
And I'm okay with that. We certainly want the message to get out there, but we want people to enjoy the content first and foremost, and we're not there to preach to anybody. It should be fun, and people should be able to come and enjoy a few minutes of something different than what they're seeing every day. We've tried a similar model. We were just in the early stages of what I would call like beta testing a new vertical for us, a music channel that sits primarily on Snapchat. And we call for our audience to submit music to us. And then right now we don't have the tech to serve and share all of it. But so we'll narrow it down to maybe 15 choices. And we'll play those 15 choices in short clips on our Snapchat and allow the audience to vote on which ones they like best just by screenshotting the different songs. And then we'll take whatever one and play that person's music on our regular Arsenic TV Snapchat for the day. And we've seen great results with that. So I certainly think, just as one example, that you can take the idea of crowdsourcing the content and crowd curating the content outside of the vertical that we're currently sitting in, and try it with other verticals and see and have had really good results. There's a lot of really creative people out there who are really excited and looking for a place to showcase their work, and people love discovering new artists.
Absolutely.
In any paradigm. So I think that I think it'll absolutely work as we expand things.
And so what about so the model is advertiser supported, right, for the most part? I
would say we're actually, right now, I think it's community supported in that it's a lot of still, working for the greater good. We say a lot of what happens at Arsenic is for peace and love, but not money. And certainly, we've been fortunate to have some great investors come on board. We are playing with and starting to get into what will ultimately be an ad-supported model. But I would say we're pre-rev for any, real business purpose.
But the goal, I mean, the vision
Absolutely.
is that
the
this
goal
is
to be a profitable business that is ad-supported through a variety of ways. But, we're also big believers in user-generated content and sponsored content more than traditional advertising and banner ads and things like that.
Yeah. And so, walk me through, like, how do you choose what brands the community will accept? Are they is the crowd gonna accept anything that you let in? Or, how do you curate that experience?
I mean, I guess ultimately it remains to be seen. We are really thoughtful about finding brands to work with that we believe fit really well with our audience, that our audience is going to respond to, that the call to action or the ask, if you will, is something that the audience, would want and be excited about. And so whether it's an app that we're working with, we think about, is this an app or a tool that our audience would want to use no matter what? Or is this a clothing company that there's an affinity for this type of clothing with our audience?
Right.
Because of how, especially right now, we don't have any of our own tech, so everything we're doing is sitting on top of other social media platforms, which means the best way we can work with an advertiser is to integrate something very organically into what we're doing. And so that's the question. Can we integrate this organically into what we're doing? And if we can, chances are it is right for our audience. And if we can't, and we're trying to put a screw peg in our own hole, then it's probably not the right brand for us to work for. And we're maybe not the right platform at this time for the brand to work for.
And so what have been some brand integrations?
So we've done some really cool things. We got to be part of, there's an app called Backstage that is a platform for music artists to interact with their audience, and also they can sell swag and tickets and things like that. And they were doing a contest with the Chainsmokers, which our audience loves.
Sure.
And so we were able to collaborate with them on the contest and offer somebody from the Arsenic, they were offering somebody from their community to win a trip with the Chainsmokers and get to go to the Belmont and then fly with the Chainsmokers to Vegas and open this club. They gave us an opportunity to be able to send an Arsenic girl. And so we got to create this whole campaign in which we asked people to go and enter the contest so that they could win on the Backstage platform, but also like one of whoever helped get the most, people on board from the Arsenic Girls also got to go. And so it felt like it was part of our community. They like the Chainsmokers. They like, music. It just fit in really well. And while it was a partnership, it was the kind of thing we would have done on any day anyway, just because we thought it was cool.
Well, let's not tell them that.
But they
got to pay for it.
but those are the things we look for.
It.
We want to find things that fit in so well that you may not be sure was that paid or not. And if we can walk away and people are asking that question, we did our job.
What hasn't worked?
I don't have a specific example off the top of my head, but the square peg round hole thing. We've started down some paths of trying to work with an idea or something that just didn't fit into sort of the social media, platforms that we work with, and you quickly discover you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right. and we've been fortunate in that when we started to see ourselves going down that path, it was sort of so evident that it wasn't going to work. It was easy to pull back before we got too far.
Yeah.
But some things work really well, and there are some things that just don't, and you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we've learned is it's easy to break the rule and not remember that at the end of the day it's about what the crowd wants, and it's easy to get caught up in an idea and start putting too much of yourself into it and not take a step back and be like, hold on, let's put this out there and see what and ask the question and see what people think, and is this something that they want?
Yeah that makes sense. And so what about every publisher is somewhat beholden now to these social networks or these, whether it's Google's algorithm or, right, there's, it's not entirely different from, having to get on the newsstands as a print publication, right, or having to get on the cable box. But the changes happen much faster, right? And so for all the brands that invested heavily in MySpace, how's that investment looking right now? Or, and publishers get the rug pulled out from them by Facebook pretty regularly. So what do you guys do to prepare yourselves? I mean, presumably you have to imagine that the relationship to Snapchat, either from you to Snapchat or from Snapchat to the audience, will continue to evolve, and same with Instagram. And so how do you operate in that environment?
Carefully. We think a lot about it, and I don't have a crystal ball, and I certainly don't have all the answers. For us, I think it's diversifying platforms. So we have a good audience on Instagram and a great audience on Snapchat, and we're starting to think about what is the third platform that we want to look at being at, or on, and how can we bring value to our audience on that platform. I think we're lucky in that, a lot of these social media companies have a presence in Los Angeles. So it's trying to create and always keep a two-way conversation going with them.
Yeah.
And look at them as a partner and sort of part of the process. And we've been really fortunate in that regard. In an informal way, but just, we've had great conversations and very supportive conversations, which is awesome on any of the platforms we're on. And I think it's also about, remembering that you're all in it together and you're all trying to serve an audience. And as long as you're creating great content that the audience really likes, that you can sort of continue, I think, to find your way.
Yeah.
And, I think that's important. And then, the other thing to be truthful is right now, only recently did Instagram, institute an algorithm, and Snapchat currently does not. And so while we think about it a lot, we're not a company to date that's had to think a lot about those pieces.
Right.
As a day-to-day part of our life. We've been thinking about what's going to happen when. And one thing that we do know is that at different times we've tried different platforms. Out of I guess it was the 2015 South by Southwest, Meerkat was a really, really talked about thing. And so we thought we would try out Meerkat. And in 5 days of using Meerkat, at that time they had a leaderboard. You could see where you stood. Arsenic was in the top 10 in the world. And in the top 100 in the world, there were 15 people that were basically what I would call arsenic influencers. They were the people that we work with who help us create our content, who started creating content on Meerkat and quickly also started growing that. And we brought, obviously a big audience with us. And we saw that when we started going even from Instagram to Snapchat, how quickly we were able to sort of migrate our current audience and then grow from there. And so I think the other thing to remember is that there's always going to be new things to try, but we've been really fortunate in being able to have a very portable audience. And as long as we keep sort of creating cool content wherever, they'll kind of, go along with us.
Yeah, that's big. Tell me about the Arsenic Influencers.
We love our influencers. So there's more than people realize in the sense that obviously most of the people that you see on camera are women. Many of who've been with us.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. I love our girls, and a lot of them have been with us since, the second shoot when there was no Instagram.
Yeah.
So they've really been in this with us, and we have a lot of affinity and loyalty, and I would do anything for those girls. But we also have a lot of photographers and videographers and people like that, some of whom, pop up here and there on our channels and certainly get tagged a lot, but they don't necessarily get as much, FaceTime.
Right.
And, it's an important community. And that's exactly what it is. We don't have, I don't have a business relationship with these people, but it's a community, and everybody helps each other out, and everyone has sort of grown their social media with each other. And for that reason, I think that there's a lot of loyalty and a lot of stickiness, and it's a good group. And then there's a group sort of, I would call beyond that are people we love to work with, but for whatever reason, maybe we only get to work with once every few months. But same thing. It's all sort of very much about people creating content that they want to create and having a lot of freedom to do it, and the support of Arsenic to help facilitate that. And with that, we bring a very strong viewership, which I think is beneficial to these artists. And so for that reason, the ecosystem just kind of keeps going in just a really positive way.
It's cool. And so how would you describe your relationship to the girls?
We call it a family, and it's kind of like that. And my family's Maltese. We're like loud, and dinner is a get your earplugs kind of event, and that's kind of what it's like. Everybody kind of comes in and out of there, especially the core group. Everyone sort of floats in and out of the Arsenic house. The door's never locked. They let themselves in. They come and they hang. They shoot. They might stay for dinner, they might not, but it's super familial. Everyone's kind of texting each other all the time, checking in, what's going on. Some people we see once a week, some people we might not see for a couple of weeks, but if you popped your head up and said, hey, what's Caitlin O'Connor doing today? Chances are somebody in the office has a pretty good idea just from communication, kind of like you would with your family.
Right.
So, it feels a lot like that. It feels like a bunch of cousins, like all, crammed in together with, a mom and dad. I won't say who's who.
That's so cool. So how do you, I'm looking from the outside, you're sort of like, you're sort of a semi-public figure. Like, obviously you're in all the business interviews.
That's new. Yes. For the longest time, no one had any idea who was behind Arsenic.
Yeah. So was that a conscious choice?
It was.
Yeah.
Billy and I both very much wanted to make it be about the creators and about the community and not about us. And struggled with the decision of finally doing any press and actually putting ourselves out there at all. But as we looked to growing the business and wanting to...
investors want to know.
People want to know sort of who's behind it,
Right.
which is kind of fun when people... I don't know what people thought, but they certainly weren't expecting Billy and I.
Uh-huh.
So I think a lot of people were surprised. But
yeah. And so how does that feel for you? Is that...
it's fun to watch Arsenic grow, and I love that. I've never done a whole lot of press or anything prior to Arsenic, so navigating that world is certainly new. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
I've had nothing but really good experiences so far, but anybody who reads press occasionally will see somebody get clearly have something go not the way they were thinking, and so you're constantly sort of thinking about, like, is this the right thing to do? We spend a lot of time thinking about what's the too much, like how much is it the right amount to put Arsenic out there and introduce Arsenic to new people. But when is it too much? Because it's not meant to be about us. It's meant to be about the creators and things like that. And so what's that balance?
Yeah. Interesting. What do you think, what sacrifices do you think you've made to do this?
That's a hard question to answer because I'm having so much fun and I like what I'm doing so much that there's no question I'd rather do this than anything else. I used to play polo, and I don't get to, I choose not to play polo right now because it's not something that you can do. You can't do that in a small way safely.
Sure.
So I'm currently not doing that. I travel home to Texas and see my family less, though it's so easy to communicate with people now. I'm in touch with them as much as I ever was. So there's things like that I guess on a technical sense I've sacrificed, but there's nothing that I feel like I'm giving up in a way that that I think, well, if this doesn't work or anything like that.
Did you give up? You were racing?
I was car racing, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't raced cars in a minute. And arguably, that's among the things that I sort of put on hold.
Yeah. So I saw you drove the Gumball 2000?
I did. That was a minute ago, but that was a lot of fun. So, but yeah, but that it's still in and around, stuff like that is so in and around Arsenic that I don't even feel like I gave it up. I guess I'm not driving anymore, but
right.
We're often talking to similar kind of rallies and things like that about a collaboration. So I feel like in an interesting way, a lot of what I did is already starting to come back into Arsenic organically.
So tell me about the goal. Where's this going, and when will you feel like you've made it?
The mission is to democratize content. So I guess we will have made it.
Is that ever done?
I don't think so. So that's really, when you ask the question, it's a hard thing to answer because I don't think you can ever be finished with a company like Arsenic. I think there will always be something new to try and some new area or vertical that we want to bring that idea to. For us, we have a lot of ideas about where we want to go and other kind of content and things like that we want to bring into Arsenic. So it's heading into being a much more sort of 360 new gen media company. And I don't know when I'll look up and be like, I don't think I'll ever look up and be like, we're done. I don't think that's how I think about things, and I know that's not how my partner thinks about things. It's sort of always like there's the next horizon that we have to hit.
And do you have the sense that the motto in terms of your relationship to the talent and the community, like, will that scale?
I think it will absolutely scale. I think it'll look a little different.
Yeah.
I think we'll get into additional verticals and a greater scale, and as we start having things that are more tech enabled, I might not have on speed dial every single creator.
Sure.
But I still think, will we feel like we have a relationship with our audience? Absolutely. We'll constantly be asking them questions, and there will always be a two-way conversation. Will we seek out the creators, especially the ones that the audience really likes, to make sure that we have sort of an added dialogue to those people? For sure. Yeah. I think technology makes it easy to scale relationships now even. You can quickly, have a quick text check-in with somebody and things like that without it being, too much time. And so I think you can build relationships like that. And I think it's important to us to do so. Even as we grow, we don't want to get away from this idea that it's, at its core, it's really a family. It's a community. And I think Arsenic will always be a community. And
has anything happened that's sort of, like, have you had to question that belief or those values?
We've never had to question the values. The thing for me as a woman that kind of gets called into question a lot is this idea of, well, wait, hold on. You say you started all this because you wanted to give women a voice, and, all that I see on your Snapchat is a bunch of women being very sexy. How can you say that you're helping women, or that's female empowerment?
Don't all women just want to be sexy? A
lot of women do want to be sexy, and the women that are on Arsenic want to be sexy. That's why they're part of Arsenic. Yeah. And the thing that a lot of people don't know is that, like, when we do a takeover on Arsenic TV and we literally hand off the Snapchat to somebody, I only hand it off to women. So anything you're seeing is completely driven by their choices. And it's a really conscious choice of ours to do it that way, so that no one is ever put in a position where they might be asked to do something that they're not comfortable with, that they get to be in the driver's seat at all times.
Right.
But I think it's definitely made me question kind of why society has this idea that if a woman wants to be sexy, there's something else happening underneath, that they can't just be feeling good or sexy or beautiful about themselves. Why it's okay for a woman to be sexy to sell a product, but if she's being sexy to build her own brand, that's no longer okay. Yeah. Which is fascinating to me, because if you're doing a commercial for a brand, that's a potential, that's a one-off situation. If you're building your own brand, you can now take that into any number of things and actually build yourself your own sort of business off of it. But we're not okay with that for some reason. So those things I spent a lot of time really starting to question and looking myself in the mirror and like, am I, do I stand for this, and do I believe this? And I absolutely do. But I've been challenged enough and challenged in sort of enough high level situations that there's no question that you have to take a step back and think about.
And I imagine those questions come to you and not Billy.
No question, which is fair, and I expect them, and now I actually welcome them, because I think it's time that we start having this conversation. So I'm excited that I get to be a little tiny piece of it.
Yeah.
It was such a no-brainer for me that I guess naively I wasn't anticipating it until it started, and I'm a little more prepared now.
Interesting. So talk about the relationship between you and Billy, and how did you know he was the right partner, and how do you continue to make that partnership work?
I am probably the luckiest person who has a business partner, in that my partner constantly thinks about how to keep our partnership strong and a really sort of fluid back and forth, and that both people are being served. And I don't know that a lot of people can say that their partner spends as much time thinking about them as they do themselves, but I have that, and it's a wonderful thing to have.
So did you know that going in?
I did. Yeah. Billy and I, so before Billy and I ever had the first conversation about arsenic, we had been friends for almost 10 years. And he knows most of my friends. I know most of his friends and friends that he's been friends with since he was a kid, and vice versa. Cool. And now we know each other's family. And so when you sort of have that much of a background, at the end of the day, I think you know exactly who you're dealing with as far as, as a core person. And so, of course, you get in conversations and you don't necessarily see every single decision eye to eye. But when you know sort of what the person is really about, figuring out the business stuff is actually relatively easy.
Sure.
And I also had the good fortune of Billy was a very successful agent in the film business, and even just reputationally, he was one of those guys who people knew would keep his word no matter what, even if it ended up being not as good for his career. If he said he was going to do something, he always did it, and I knew that both from my experiences but also anecdotally.
And how would he describe you as a partner?
He would say. He would say, "She's not bossy, she's the boss." I think he would say that I am tenacious. He often says that I am extremely hardworking. He knew I was hardworking going in, but he's, I think, often very kindly points out that I will work until the work is done, and the work is never done, which is great. I think he'd probably say that I'm stubborn, I'm loud, and then I guess the rest you'd have to ask him.
Yeah. What about if I was on your team at Arsenic? What would I hear you say over and over?
It's not about us, it's about the audience. The crowd is the company.
Yeah.
We talk about those two things a lot, and to the point that anybody who works with us is probably tired of hearing it. I work with a lot of really amazing young women, and so they hear me talk a lot about sort of demanding a seat at the table and not hanging back and coming in and speaking up for what they want, but also following through. That it's not enough just to say that you want to do something and have an opinion and raise your hand, which I think women struggle with in general. But in order to make it better for the next generation, we also have to make sure that when we do those things that we see them through all the way. Yeah. And so I think you would probably also know that there would be some version of that coming out of my mouth on a daily basis.
Cool. So as we move toward our lightning round, I'm going to borrow a couple questions from the Arsenic blog.
Oh, dear.
What do you know for sure?
I know at the end of the day, you've only got yourself and your family.
That's good. So if you could give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would you say to her?
Stop worrying so much and just go for it.
What's the last great book you read?
I Want My MTV.
Oh, cool. Do you have a favorite band or DJ?
Well, I'm old school, and this is an often debated topic at the Arsenic House, but my favorite will always be the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Billy. I know you like the Beatles. Billy also likes a lot of hip hop and EDM, but we have a Beatles Rolling Stone ongoing debate. And then I've become, we listen to a lot of EDM, and we've worked with a lot of people, and I've become a bit of a Diplo fan.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, cool. I appreciate you doing this with us.
Thank you. This was fun and totally painless.
That's the idea.
It was. You guys managed to almost let me forget that there's like 2 cameras going and a mic in my face.
Yeah,
So-
no, this is great. I appreciate your generosity with all of your wisdom.
This was awesome. Thank
Good
you
stuff.
so much.
I'm sure everyone knows how to find Arsenic, but tell us just in case.
Well, on Snapchat it's Arsenic TV, and on Instagram it's Arsenic Magazine.
Very cool. Amanda, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope I got you all hot and bothered listening to that interview with Amanda. She was great, super smart, lots of good stuff there for you to learn from. Come back next week. We got more Rebel Radio goodness. And in the meantime, hit us on Twitter at @RebelRadioNet. Find us on Facebook. Check out the website, rebelradio.net, built with Wix.com, one of our loving sponsors here at Rebel Radio. And leave us a review on iTunes. Peace.